I was raised on the beaches of Puget Sound with the mountains on one side of me and the beach on the other. And as a child, I walked on the beaches. And I always had a very vivid imagination, and I always wondered what was it like before people populated the shores of Puget Sound. There were no houses, and the natives would come there in their canoes, and they could beach their canoes and come up and pick blackberries or salal or whatever, catch some salmon, build a fire, roast their salmon, and just really make the beach a place where there was a great abundance of life, and they had plenty of food, and they could walk on the beaches. And for some reason, it just fascinated me as a child, and I always imagined what would it be like to see those canoes coming out of down the channel towards where I was, and pulling up on the beach, and people getting out of those canoes and walking up, not knowing I was there. It just, for some reason, it always fascinated me. And I imagined all sorts of things about how they might build a lodge there and live where I did, but not in a house, but in a lodge, and tell stories. And raise their children there. In the beginning, after the earth was populated, it became overly populated, and there really wasn't enough room for all the creatures that were on the earth. And so the chiefs got together, and they had a council, and they decided that they would divide up into groups. And one group was going to don capes of feathers, and they would fly into the air, and they would be the birds. And then another group would don capes of fur, and they would go into the forest, and they would be the bears and the wolves and the other furred creatures that live in the forest. And then there was another group that would don capes of scales and fins and tails, and they would go into the sea, and they would become the sea life, the whales and the salmon and the halibut. And those that were remaining would be the people. And so it ended up that there were 4 different groups. There were the birds, and then there were the animals, the mammals, and then there was the sea life. And those that remained were the human beings. And so the natives believed that the creatures of this earth were capable of changing themselves at will from one form to another. In other words, they could be a raven, or a raven could be a human. In that time, when man clothed himself in scales, feathers, and fur, Salmon Woman called her 5 children to her and bid them journey into the ocean. Now it is known that the 5 children established villages far out into the sea. Each year in the early spring, the salmon change from human form into salmon, and those at the farthest edge of the ocean start their journey across the sea and up the rivers along the Pacific Northwest coast. Along the way, they alert the salmon people of the other villages, who promise to follow at different times of the year. So it is that the silver, chinook, chum, sockeye, and coho journey to our rivers from early spring until late fall. The process of creating a bronze is almost like, to me, the process that occurred at the birth of the earth. It's a lot of chaos and confusion, and there's the slurry that is like that came out of the cosmos, and then there's the fire and the burning and then the breaking of the crust, and eventually the bronze emerges out of that crust and then is painted with the beautiful color. Bronze ingots are introduced into the crucible and are melted over a period of time. Once they have the bronze and it has reached a temperature of anywhere from, I'm going to say, 1900 to 2200 degrees, they're ready to cast. Smaller castings amazingly require hotter temperatures than larger castings, simply because you need the bronze to go into all the little nooks and crannies of a small piece, and so the bronze, you don't want it to start to solidify before it reaches the end point that you need it to. They check the top of it and rake the top to get impurities off of the surface of the bronze. After the bronze has been cast, it will be allowed to cool, and it's best actually if you wait anywhere from 4 hours to overnight. And at that point, you can take a sledgehammer and break the investment away from the outside of the bronze. It starts by my creating a three-dimensional image, and many people ask me, you know, where do you get your ideas, Arlene? And the only thing I can say is that they just sort of pop into my head at various and sundry times, and I think about them over a period of time, and all of a sudden I'm able to begin to visualize and create a three-dimensional piece of artwork. Being an artist is, for me, isn't always easy. I see a lot of things that other people don't see. I feel a lot of things that other people don't see or don't feel. Or maybe they do and they just never express it. It's just the fact that I have a tendency to see beyond the surface. I can get down inside of the object that I'm looking at, or that I'm observing or participating with. And this has its advantages in the fact that it lets me actually feel what the eagle is like when he soars up over the earth, and but it also lets me get into where people are and their emotions, because this is a very important part of sculpture. If you can't portray the emotion in the sculpture, your sculpture is dead. It doesn't have a vibrance that it really needs. And so this is an important part of my work for me. So before I take anything to the foundry, I want to make sure that everything is absolutely perfect, that every line in it flows the way that I want it to. All the little areas that I've cut out are perfect. They don't have any little high areas in them, or areas that that disrupt the line of the artwork. So when I get close to finishing a piece, I get really down into it and really fine-tune it, and make sure that every little crevice, every little seam is not there, because when you take it to the foundry and I turn it over to the foundry people, they will even be able to pick up my fingerprints. And I'm sure for some people that might be nice, but it's not what I want on my artwork. I want it to be as perfect as I can possibly create it.